Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hey, it's great to have you here on Life Support. What we do in this program is we tell stories of how God has entered into people's lives, and it's an amazing journey to listen to those that God has touched in very unique ways. I'm also really touched by the bravery of those who come and join us and tell their stories. And we've got a very unique story to tell you today, and I think it's one that's going to inspire you and also help you understand some of the difficulties that are out there. David Johnson is my guest, and it's so great to have you here. Thanks for dropping by.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and you're a Twin Cities guy, are you not?
That's correct. I was born and raised in the Twin Cities in St. Paul. So born and raised St. Paulite.
A St. Paulite, yes. There's so many Minneapolisites. It's good to meet a St. Paulite as well. And for those of you who don't live in this area, there's a little bit of a rivalry between Minneapolis and St. Paul, kind of the big brother and the little brother.
That is so true.
Goes back and forth. David, you were a very successful businessman. You had a very high-profile job. And then things started to kind of go awry. Why don't you tell us kind of just start where you want to and just kind of tell us the journey that you've been on?
Sure. I think the journey really starts much earlier than where I was at in my particular career. I was born in a middle-class family, and Pastor Paul, I wish I could tell you that I had all these challenges in life and I had to overcome obstacles and I wasn't successful, and that's why I landed where I landed. But the truth is, I was raised well. I didn't face many obstacles at all. My family was raised in the church. My mother and grandmother were very active in the church. I was raised in an extended family, so I was raised by my mother and grandmother and grandfather. Church was not only expected, it was required. But my involvement in church was really on the outside. I went to church, I was confirmed, but I couldn't tell you Old Testament from New Testament. You might as well have been speaking German to me. Mm-hmm. So I was really on the outside. I was doing whatever my mother and grandmother wanted me to do and expected me to do, but I was not engaged whatsoever. As I turned 18, I drifted even further away from church. I moved out of the house. The only time I was in church was maybe at a wedding or a funeral or on Christmas and Easter. So I was a Creaster. My focus was really on education and getting a job, having a career, and that's really where I spent all of my time. I went to undergrad here in the cities. I received my master's here in the cities. And I worked for an organization for almost 30 years and moved my way all the way up to, I held a title as vice president. And on the outside, if you were to look at me, I probably seemed cool and collected and happy. But on the inside, that was completely opposite. I was a mess. I had anxiety. I worried a lot. I was afraid to let people get close to me. I didn't really want them to see the true me, which was filled with envy. I had a lot of things in life. My mother and grandmother provided for me. I had nothing that I wanted, but yet I was still not happy. I wanted more. I wanted more material items. I saw what other people had, and for whatever reason, I thought I needed that too. Mm-hmm. And so my life was pretty empty. Despite the fact of having a family, I was married, I had a great job, I was really empty inside.
You had the American dream.
I had the American dream. I didn't face adversity in my life, although I have to tell you, I admired people who did. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to overcome anything. So my story started off as pretty easy. I didn't have a lot of challenges in my life. I didn't have to get up off my feet and start anew or do a course correct. Everything was pretty much there for me. That, I think, is when I hit my peak, I think, is when I started to, stumble. I engaged in activity that was not illegal, or was not legal, I should say. I committed a theft from my job, all self-inflicted, so no one else's fault but my own. And so I lost my job. I lost my family. I lost friends. People that I was close to all of a sudden were gone. I was embarrassed. I certainly was alone and lonely. And that's when a friend of mine reached out to me. He was my old high school basketball coach. And it was strange. It wasn't a coach-player kind of traditional relationship. I think it was his first job. So literally, we were 17 and 18, and he was 23, 24. And so the age, we were really close in age. And so we had a special kind of relationship. I admired him so much that it would hurt me, not only if I failed on the court, but if I failed outside of life as well, outside of the court. And he reached out to me. He found out about my struggles, and he reached out to me. We had seen each other. We were in a fantasy football league together, so we'd come together at drafts yearly or have a lunch or two every so often. But we really didn't connect, partly because I was keeping people at bay, embarrassed of my frailties. And he reached out to me in a non-judgmental kind of way that put me at ease. And he just talked about, first of all, just how are you doing? What can I do to help you? Then it moved on to, hey, I got something for you. Maybe a different way to look at the world, a different way to kind of live your life. And that's when he introduced me to Eagle Brook Church. And we started attending church together. And after church, we would get together for lunch and just talk about the lessons, talk about the learnings. And one day, after maybe a month or two of going to church with him at Eagle Brook, I decided to accept Christ into my life again. And it was amazing. It was a sunny day, and the sun was bright, but I realized it was a different kind of light that I was feeling. It was the power, the light that was getting rid of the darkness. It was the light of God. And I'll never forget that day, May 6, 2018, and that's when I accepted Christ into my life.
Wow. Not very long ago.
Not very long ago.
A new journey for you. So we're taught from the time we were little kids here in America that the American dream is, that's what it's all about, man. Like if we can, you get your job, you get your house, you get your 2 cars, and you live happily ever after. But you did that, and you were still empty on the inside. Did that surprise you that you looked around and said, I've got all this and I'm still struggling?
It did. That's a great question. It did. It struck me. I thought, here I have everything that anybody else would want. I had the car, I had the house, I had the family, I had a great job, I had great friends, but yet I still felt empty. I wasn't happy. And that surprised me because I worked so hard for many years to get to this point, and I still wasn't happy. I was empty. And I think if I would have told people that at that time, they would have been in shock. Because like I said, on the outside, I looked like a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, successful guy. On the inside, I was a mess. And it's funny, sometimes, you have these little bumps in the road, but nothing major for me. And mostly great times. And people would say to me, sometimes you forget God when things are going good.
Yeah.
For me at that time, I didn't know him to forget him.
Yeah.
God was completely out of my life, and I was completely empty.
Well, you have certainly been able to tell your story, and now you've got a great story to tell. But I am intrigued by that idea of how you kept people away from you. It's exhausting, isn't it, to try to live these 2 different kind of lives in front of people?
It is exhausting, and I think that's where I received, where I felt great anxiety. I didn't know which way was up. And so, I was fiercely independent. I felt like if there were any problems, I'd solve them on my own. And at that time, I think I probably thought, if you have to pray, you must be weak. If you have to ask for help, you must be weak. And so, obviously, my life was completely distorted, and I was completely going down the wrong path, and it was exhausting. You might find this interesting or funny, but almost when I went to prison, I started to feel some kind of relief, like there was a load off my shoulders. And in the midst of all the chaos, I felt free, whereas on the outside, I felt like I was in prison. Yeah. So it was kind of ironic.
Yeah, I can understand that. You had spent so much time trying to convince yourself and others that you're this kind of altogether person, but now you don't have to pretend anymore.
Right.
And you're just dealing with reality, which is freeing because now you're living in truth, right?
Right. That's exactly right. You said it much better than I could have, but that's exactly what was going on. It was so ironic that in prison I felt free. Outside of prison, I felt like I was incarcerated.
Yeah. So tell me about that journey from the time that you stole this money, and then the time that you're in prison. What was that journey like through that whole period of your life? I mean, everything came crashing down, I would assume, all around you?
Everything came crashing down. I lost everything. And so when I was sentenced to prison, I was scared to death. I had never been in trouble in my entire life. I think probably my greatest infraction was a speeding ticket. And so the great unknown, obviously, was prison. And what kept me strong was certainly my faith. Connecting with Brian Hegseth and Eaglebrook Church kept me going, but there was this unknown out there, and I was fearful. When I got to prison, I was looking for that faith community that I could find. But initially, it was just survival mode. Everyone goes to the same location for orientation when you go to prison, and that's in St. Cloud. And I think literally every single moment of every single day, I feared for my life every day. I think that location is just like any other movie that you've ever seen about prison. During that orientation process, you don't have a lot of freedom. Not that you get great freedom in prison, but you had even less there. And so I was kind of left alone to my own thoughts. And so I did a lot of prayer on my own. I was thankful and grateful that I had a cellmate that was also a member of the community of Christ, and we would pray together.
What a gift that is.
That was a great gift because of all the people you could be cellmates with. I couldn't even imagine some of the other possibilities. And so he and I connected right off the bat. It was an interesting time during that time in that there was some violence going on in the prisons. I think one of the correctional officers was attacked and I think ultimately died. And so all movements were restricted. So you really pretty much just stayed right in your cell and never got out. And like I said, the only thing that saved me at that time was him. I had someone that I could connect with and have fellowship with. I was there for a couple of months, and then I was transferred to another location, a minimum security facility. The idea there was that I was going to go to a program. It's called boot camp, and successful completion of boot camp would mean that I would get out early. And unfortunately, while I was there exercising and working out to prepare for boot camp, I hurt my knee, and later on I discovered that I tore my meniscus and fractured my kneecap. And so I suffered through that injury because you weren't going to get medical attention, so you were just going to have to deal with the pain. But I did find a faith group, and so that was a better surprise and a bigger bonus for me. And so my faith group, which was one, expanded to about 20 or 25 individuals that came together on a weekly basis. And so that always helped me get through those trying times, is just having that faith community that we could come together, share and exchange, and pray together. Eventually, though, when I couldn't obviously participate in boot camp, I was transferred to another facility. And transferring is always a stressful time because you don't get any notice. You're told often the night before or hours before that you're moving. You're cut off from the outside, so your family doesn't even know that you're moving. So it takes several days for you to be able to connect with them. So when I got to this last facility, I was walking around, checking out my surroundings, and I found that there was a Bible study class at night. And so I thought, well, I'm going to go here. I missed my group from my last facility. I'll discover a new group here. And what a surprise to find out that the Bible study group was led by Eagle Brook. And so I felt like I came home.
Yeah.
I know there's that saying, you can never come home again.
Yeah.
But I came home.
Yeah.
So that made the rest of my time much easier, knowing that Eagle Brook was here, and I found another faith community that I could connect with.
So all of this time, God was still involving yourself. And I think what people that haven't been through these things don't understand is that God does unique work. My wife and I, because of some things that have happened to my family, we had a chance to speak at the Faribault facility here in Minnesota. Yes. And they actually put the guys who were in for murder in the front couple of rows because we were talking to them about victim reconciliation type of issues. Mm-hmm. And several of them came up afterwards and said, wow, thank you for this. How can we do this? And I got to tell you, one guy said, I've never been so fulfilled. God's using me in amazing ways. Yeah. And it wasn't like this kind of fake, I'm just making the best of it. God was uniquely working in these people's lives. Mm-hmm. And did you find that to be the case in your life as well?
Oh, definitely. When I started there, I was at Stillwater Minimum Security Prison. I think maybe we had 4 or 5 or a handful of people that were attending Bible study. I think by the time I left, that number grew to 15, 20, 25 people. And it was interesting while we were sitting there. You would see people poking in the window to find out what's going on. What are you people up to in there? Mm-hmm. And I learned quickly that you bring people to God by your actions. Mm-hmm. And people saw that we were getting something, that we were feeling fulfilled, that we were happy. Despite all that was going on and where we were, we were happy. We had laughter in the room. We shook each other's hands. We were hugging. We were seeing powerful services on TV, and people wanted to get some of what we had. And so we did feel fulfilled. And as I mentioned before, I felt so at ease. I felt at home. I felt free for the first time. So much so that we started our own Bible group outside of Eagle Brook. So we were meeting on our own outside of our Tuesday night Bible study meetings. And we were getting tables full of people. And what was really fun about that and fulfilling is early on there was a handful of us that were kind of leading Bible study. Eventually, people started coming up saying, hey, I have a topic. I want to lead next week.
Oh, wow.
And so it just grew. And then people taking different leadership roles. I don't think I ever felt prouder. I thought about my work and some of the things that we accomplished there. This was far more fulfilling, far more fulfilling.
That message in itself is worth hearing. We don't have a lot of time left in this segment, but I do want to talk to you next time about re-entry, because I know that's tough, and I don't think people understand that too much either. But you ran into Lifeblood curriculum, which is something that Five Stone Media puts out and publishes. What did Lifeblood curriculum do for you? How did that help you in this process?
Well, it helped me put key pieces of items into my life that provided hope for the future. Lifeblood was amazing. We saw stories from other inmates that had similar situations to yourself. And as you're watching these powerful stories and then subsequently our powerful discussions afterwards, you looked at individuals and you thought, well, if they can do it, maybe I can too. Mm-hmm. And if they can get a second chance or chances, maybe I could get that too. And so each week we had a different topic. It was, on family and influence, hope, power, loyalty, doing the right thing, self-reliance, which was a big one for me, second chances and transformation. And so each had a different theme that brought hope into your life. The stories were dramatic, and you found yourself thinking, I'm not alone. And for me, I realized I can't do this alone. I need help. I need help from God and from others in order to have any chance for success in the future.
Did you find that hope is a big problem there?
Yeah, people had lost their hope, and even I'd have good days, and then I'd have days that weren't quite as good, because you're already there at your lowest moment in life, and you face obstacles left and right, and you sit through days wondering, when is it going to kind of go my way? God never gives you more than what you can handle. But certainly there were days when you thought, okay, I've handled a lot here. Can we have calm waters and sunny skies for a while? But it was very easy to lose hope. And how we strengthen ourselves was just getting together and helping each other during those low moments. One of my friends there said to me, if you focus on God, everything else would find its proper place. And that's really kind of the theme that we took. We focused on prayer. We focused on fellowship, even in tough times, and we knew that God had us. He had our back, and eventually, things would find their proper place.
Well, it's quite obvious talking to you that God has done a work in your life. When you talk about what He was doing there, you just light up, and it's pretty neat to see what you've experienced through hardship and through your own mistakes. And sometimes we feel like we're never going to recover from our own mistakes. And God even uses those for His glory.
Right. It's an opportunity. Those trials and tribulations that you go through are just an opportunity. And perhaps for me, the best thing was drifting away from God. Because today, I'm a much different person. I'm a better person. I'm happier than I've ever been, despite what I've gone through.
Because you can just be yourself.
I could just be myself. I accepted God, built a relationship, continue to build a relationship, and I continue to change from the inside out.
Pretty cool.
It's very cool.
All right, David, we're so glad you came by. We're going to get you next time, too, and I want to talk to you about what it's like to have to go from the inside to the outside. And I know there are very unique challenges with that. I want to hear more of your story, but thanks for being brave enough to tell your story here. And I know it's going to be inspirational for a lot of people just to hear again how God continues to work, because everybody has their own darkness, everybody has their own sorrow, everyone has their own stuff that they're grappling through. So your story is going to help a lot of people.